Hello, BookTube. Who's up for a little Tuesday reads / TBR torture? I've got 5 books I want to show you here. The first 2 I have not read. The last 3 I have read, and we'll start with the 2 that I haven't read. The first one of which is this ongoing mystery here on this channel, this BookTube channel, where suddenly in 2019 I seem to be getting much more science fiction and fantasy than I ever got in 2018 or 2017. I don't know why that would be. And this is a perfect example of that. It's got a lovely cover. It's by Suzanne Palmer, and it's Finder. That's really neat. It's kind of a space melange type cover, and it's an April 2nd book. I thought I'd just tell you about it, while I learn about it myself. The back of the book is just some of the high-profile awards that this author has won for her short fiction. Praise is rolling in for Finder, and that's because the top part of the sell sheet is all about the blurbs for the book. Acclaimed short story author Suzanne Palmer's wonderful Hope Punk debut, the first in a trilogy. I have no idea what Hope Punk is. I have no idea at all. I assume it means optimistic science fiction, but I guess maybe now it has a name of its own. And this is the first in a trilogy. It follows delightful hero Fergus Ferguson, a finder, hence the title, and repo man who gets more than he bargains for when a mission to take back his spacecraft goes terribly awry. With loads of humor and a thrilling plot that will keep readers turning the pages, Finder is a must-read science fiction novel this spring. Ferguson has one job: find the spacecraft Venetia's sword and steal it back from the power-hungry trade boss Aram Gilger. He finally locates Gilger on Cerny, a gas giant harvesting colony. Fergus thinks the hard part will be getting past the space miners that stand between him and the ship. When a cable car explosion launches Cerny into a civil war, Fergus finds himself caught in the crosshairs. He will have to side with Gilger's enemies, risk death, and be abducted by aliens in order to complete the mission and save the planet. Okay, so we won't hold it against the author that pub sheet is absolutely choked with cliches. We won't hold it against the author. The pub sheet, she may have read it, she may have approved it. It's not necessarily true that she wrote it, so we won't hold that against her at all. And who is she when she's at home? She's an award-winning and acclaimed writer of science fiction. In 2018, she won a Hugo Award for Best Novelette in The Secret Life of Bots. I think I remember that. Not from the Hugo Awards, but from, I think I know, I read it when it first came out. Her short fiction has won Readers' Awards for Asimov's, Analog, and Interzone magazines, and has been included in the Locus recommended reading list. And she's been a finalist for the Theodore Sturgeon Memorial Award and for the UGM Foster Memorial Award. And she has a fine arts degree from the University of Massachusetts Amherst. Okay, so she is well known, it sounds like, for her short fiction, and this is a novel. It's early April. I am very happy to be getting more science fiction and fantasy. God knows I love reading it. I usually just rely on used bookstores for it, for older stuff. But if I'm getting new stuff, that's fine by me. I'll have to write and thank the publicist. And I will certainly read the book for April. Then this next one is tiny. It's a wee slim little thing. I think you can clearly see the demographic that it's going after. This is the English language translation of Phillippe Besson's Lie With Me. And the translator is mentioned on the cover in typeface that is noticeable instead of the ant crawl that they get if they're on the cover at all. And the reason for that is very obvious. The reason for that is because the translator is Molly Ringwald. The Molly Ringwald. So apparently she has a second career as a translator. And this has a blurb at the top of the cover by Andre Asselman, the author of Call Me By Your Name, and that is clearly the demographic that this thing is going for. The award-winning best-selling French novelist Phillippe Besson this award-winning okay, all right, let's start over. not 100% going to blame myself. I might blame the dust jacket copy. The award-winning best-selling French novel by Phillippe Besson, quote, The French Brokeback Mountain. Phillippe Besson is not the French Brokeback Mountain. You mean the novel, and Brokeback Mountain is not a novel. Tells the story of an affair between 2 teenage boys in 1984 France, translated with subtle beauty and haunting lyricism by the iconic and internationally renowned actress-writer Molly Ringwald. Just outside a hotel in Bordeaux, Phillippe chances upon a young man who bears a striking resemblance to his first love. What follows is a look back at the relationship he's never forgotten, a hidden affair with a boy named Thomas during their last year of high school. Without acknowledging they know each other, in the halls, they steal time to meet in secret, carrying on a passionate, world-altering affair. Dazzlingly rendered in English by Ringwald in her first ever translation. Oh wow, this is her first one. Fantastic. Besson's powerfully moving coming-of-age story captures the eroticism and tenderness of first love and the heartbreaking passage of time. And there's a word missing from that sentence. There's a word missing from that sentence. This is a slim, gay coming-of-age novel written by a gay author named Phillippe about a character named Phillippe. So I'm going to read that sentence again, and I'm going to include the word that was missing. Dazzlingly rendered in English by Ringwald in her first ever translation, Besson's powerfully moving coming-of-age story captures the eroticism and tenderness of his first love. Not the first love, his first love. This is autofiction. But I was curious to know, I mean, I'm going to read the whole thing, and it's going to take me about half an hour to do, but I was curious to know the tone of the English language translation, so I took a page from Sean the Bookmaniac's book and went to page 112. Sean does a routine thing on his channel. He hasn't done it much recently. I love it, though. The page 112 tag, which he adopted from a French prize that Philippe Besson was probably familiar with, in which the judges are given just one page, page 112, of all books under consideration. And they create their long list from those pages rather than from the title and the author's cachet and whatnot. So I now routinely turn to page 112 of new books to see what that's going to be like. And on page 112, I won't read you the whole thing, but there's a middle paragraph. The entire paragraph is in parentheses. I correct myself because I've just been lying. Of course it took time, a lot of time, before I admitted that everything was lost, before I decided to say goodbye forever. I kept hoping for a sign. I thought of initiating another meeting. I started letters that I never sent. Desire does not go out like a match. It extinguishes slowly as it burns into ash. In the end, I gave up all possibility of a reunion, which is either really good translating or really good prose. We'll see. I'll read the whole thing and see. I just noticed the back cover. The back cover is just blurbs, just a roster of blurbs of people, including Andre Assman. So those are the two that I have not read, and they will not take me. This will take me an hour and a half to do. So those are the two that I will read. Now I want to show you the three that I have read. They're all still new, but I've already read them, and one of them is not explicitly new. It's a reprint in paperback, and oh boy, oh boy. I recommend all three of these books, but I don't think I recommend any of them more than I do this first one. This is by Amy Sarig King. It's coming out in a paperback from Scholastic, and it's Me and Marvin Gardens. And it's the story of an 11-year-old boy named Obi, who his family has seen better days, and they live on a patch of wilderness, but the world, condominiums and parking garages and whatnot, is encroaching from all sides. And Obi loves his stream. He has a stream that he loves, that he goes to visit, just to be in touch with the wild and the calm and the peace of it all, which he badly needs for a bunch of reasons. He has flawed parents. He himself is subject to nosebleeds, and has learned, he tells us early in the book, that rather disconcertingly, that he's learned that holding your head back or anything like that doesn't help any. You just have to lean forward and let it bleed itself out. And he routinely does that at his stream. And another thing that he does at his stream is clear it of plastic. He picks out plastic bags and plastic water bottles and whatnot because he cares about the fact that the stream runs clear past where he is. And one day when he's doing that, he notices something rustling in the grass, and it's too big for a frog, and it's too big for a cat, and it's not quite a pig, and it's not quite a dog. It is a creature that he comes to name Marvin Gardens, and it is, as far as he can tell, one of a kind. He's never seen an animal like this in science class. No one has ever seen an animal like this. It's touchingly described by the author. And Marvin Gardens eats plastic. Only. Marvin Gardens only eats plastic and thrives on it. And the book is a story, it's the coming age story of Obi. It's his coming of age and gaining self-confidence. But it's also an incredibly touching story of the two of them reaching out across the species boundary. This is, I believe, it's always tough to tell, but I believe this is a young person's book that is destined for immortality. I think this is a classic. And it's going to be out. I don't know that I have a pub sheet on it, but it's going to be out real soon if it's not out already. It's a new paperback of this book. You should get it. It's really, really good. It will touch you, even if you don't have kids. This next one is a graphic novel, and I loved it even though it does not involve Kryptonians. This is from FSG. I think this comes out in April. No, in June, in early June. This is by Jonathan Feder-Vorn, and it is Moonbound, Apollo 11 and the Dream of Spaceflight. We've talked on this channel about how there's a glut of Apollo 11 books because this is the 50th anniversary. This one is slightly different in that it is a graphic novel, and it is amazingly good. Just amazingly good. It takes a lot more in a graphic novel like this. It takes a lot more to be amazingly good than simply telling the story. This does tell the story of the Apollo 11 astronauts. It also tells, you know, the history of spaceflight up until that point. But it takes a lot more than that to do this well. You also have to, as a graphic artist, you have to have a sense of pacing. You have to have a sense of altering your tone, of keeping things interesting. Not just, I mean, you can tell already, it's not just in terms of the color palette, although the color palette does change, but the pacing is also really important, and this author has it down perfectly. This is an amazing book on Apollo 11, and a lot of other, it's a much broader story than that. Let me read you just a bit about it. Jonathan Feder-Vorm takes us back to Prague in the time of eccentric Rudolf II, when Johann Kepler and Tycho Brahe worked out the movements of the planets. He narrates the history of rocketry through the story of the Nazi and later American scientist Wernher von Braun, and he shows us the launch of Sputnik, the first man-made satellite to enter Earth's orbit, through the sad saga of its architect, Sergei Korolev. Through his beautiful illustrations, Feder-Vorm presents the famous moment of Neil Armstrong's small step for man, but he also takes us behind the scenes of NASA to tell the stories of the many men and women who made the revolutionary events of 1969 a reality. And it's wonderful. He misses nothing. So although I am a connoisseur of these kinds of books, I'm a big NASA fan, and I've been reading them all, and I've been writing about them all, and I will continue to do that all throughout 2019. June is going to see a highlight. This is an amazing book, and it's one of those perfectly done books where, much like me and Marvin Gardens, I hadn't realized the connection until now. It'll work no matter what your age is. You could give this book to a kid, and they will see everything in it that's in it, and you can also read it yourself as a full-grown adult and see everything that's in it. It's just a high recommendation. And then this last one is an actual kid's book. It's an actual kid's picture book, and it's also another wholehearted recommendation. And now that I think about it, once again, it is another book that can be read by any age, because it's one of those kids' picture books that is sincere in its own aims. It's not talking down to anybody, and so it can be read by anybody. I love those kinds. I understand that the didactic children's picture books have a role to play, I guess, but I love it when a children's picture book just wants to tell a story to any age. And that's what this is. This is written by Phillippe Stead and illustrated by Aaron Stead, and it's music for Mr. Moon. We may have seen it on this channel already, but I wanted to praise it again. It's about a little girl who's playing her cello in her room when an owl keeps interrupting her, and she throws something at the owl to get it to fly away, and it accidentally knocks the moon out of the sky, and forms a friendship with the moon, talks to the moon, and eventually wants to get the moon back home with the help of lots and lots of owls and a whole bunch of shopkeepers who contribute various things, including a hat. Let me see. There is a hat from Mr. Moon. And the shopkeepers, of course, are all animals. There we have a little girl rowing with Mr. Moon. He has his hat on. And the shopkeepers don't charge anything, because one of the little touching notes in the book, at some point in their past, the moon has done them a favor. Let me see if I can give you an example. When she wants, for instance, when she wants to go to get the moon a hat, she goes to the hat store, which is run by a bear, and she wants to pay him. She wants to pay him $1 from her pocket. But the hat maker says, Mr. Moon may have any hat he likes. Then he gave Hank, who's the little girl, back her $1, because once, when he was very young, he had fallen in love on a moonlit night. And the same is true with all of them. They all want to help the moon get back in the sky. And the moon is also wonderfully portrayed here. The moon is portrayed here as a little sad and a little lonely. because no one ever visits. because the moon shines on the whole world and does all these favors for people without knowing it, but no one ever does any favors for the moon. It's actually a wonderfully charming thing, done in these very light, almost ghostly sketches. See how you can see the table right through, the table and chairs are right through everything. That sort of very winsome thing. There's the house, but the house doesn't even have outlines. It's just light that makes the house a house. That actually works. It actually works really well. So it's a high recommendation as well. I don't, again, seem to have a pub sheet for this, but it's probably April. So there you go. There's a little Tuesday Reads / TBR for you. We have a kid's book, an actual kid's picture book. Music for Mr. Moon. And then we have another moon book, Moonbound, by Jonathan Feder-Vorm. This is a graphic novel about not just the Apollo 11 moon mission, but all of the science that leads up to it. All of it done wonderfully. It takes a lot of work to do that without it being droning, with it being always visually interesting, and this author manages it totally. Then we have Me and Marvin Gardens. Of all the books on this pile, and most of the books that I've talked about in the last week, it's the one that I firmly believe people will still be reading in 70 years. I think it is a classic. Certainly it is wonderful enough to be one. Then we have two books that I will be getting to immediately. I'll be getting to them today. There's Lie With Me by Phillippe Besson, translated by Molly Ringwald, and Finder by Suzanne Palmer, a hope punk novel that appears to be, as far as I can tell, her first novel. She's won lots and lots of praise for her short stories. This appears to be her first novel. So I'll be getting to those to finish off this pile. But we have lots of other bookish stuff to talk about. So I will be back. Thanks.